A warm greetings to all. The topic for today's discussion is Making and Historical Background of the Constitution of India. The Constitution is a set of rules and regulations according to which the administration of a state is run. The term constitution is derived from a Latin word constitutio, which means a law which is made to stand firm. So it is a fundamental document of a country or basic law of a country. In every state, a constitution is a legal manifesto of a nation. The Constitution of India was not prepared in haste, but the process of the evolution of the constitution began many decades before India became independent. Our nation's ideas, institutions, and the process of achieving them were included in the constitution by its founders. The ideas were national unity, integrity, democracy, and an equitable society. The new society was to be achieved through a socio-economic revolution pursued with a democratic spirit using constitutional democratic institutions. Unity, social revolution, democracy are mutually dependent on it. The constitution makers created a liberal democratic constitution placing individual at the center. Each and every written constitution that is written by a Constituent Assembly. That means a Constituent Assembly is a body of representatives which is composed for the purpose of drafting a constitution. The idea of Constituent Assembly of India was first put forward by M.N. Roy in 1934. In 1935, it became the official demand of Indian National Congress. It was accepted in August 1940. The members of the Constituent Assembly were indirectly elected by the members of the provincial assemblies by method of single transferable vote system of proportional representation. The Constituent Assembly of India consists of 389 members. But after the partition of India, the Constituent Assembly of India had 299 members or representatives. These representatives included 229 members from provinces and 70 members from princely states. The election took place in July 1946, and also the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly of India took place in a constitutional hall at New Delhi on 9th December 1946. Dr. Sachidananda Sinha was the first president of the Constituent Assembly. In the first meeting, the Constituent Assembly adopted objective resolution which later became a preamble of Indian Constitution. The objective resolution defines the aims of the Constituent Assembly and it enshrines aspirations and values behind the constitution making. On the basis of the objective resolution, India's constitution gave institutional expression to the fundamental commitments like equality, liberty, democracy, sovereignty, and identity of a nation. The preamble of the Constitution of India is derived from objective resolution. Then the Constituent Assembly reassembled on 14th August 1947 as Constituent Assembly for Independent India. After partition, Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the President of the Constituent Assembly of Independent India. Then Professor Harendra Kumar Mukherjee was the Vice President of the Constituent Assembly. And also the Constituent Assembly took 2 years, 11 months and 17 days to complete its task of drafting the Constitution for Independent India. During this period, it held 11 sessions covering total of 165 days. Then the prominent members of the Constituent Assembly: Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, C. Rajagopalachari, Asaf Ali, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Rajkumari Ahmed Kaur, J.B. Kripalani, Rajendra Prasad, Rafi Ahmed Kidwai, Hansa Mehta, N.G. Renga, T.T. Krishnamachari, K. Munshi, Frank Anthony, John Mathai, K. Kamaraj. These are the most important or prominent members of the Constituent Assembly. Their contributions are immensely valued in the making of the Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is also known as the chairman of the drafting committee. Then B.N. Rao as known as the constitutional advisor. Then Surendranath Mukherjee as the chief draftsman of the Constituent Assembly. And also, the Constitution of India was signed by 284 members. And also the women leaders are represented. Most important women leaders represented in the Constituent Assembly are Sarojini Naidu, Ammu Surendranath, Sujeta Kripalani, Annie Maskarni, Kamala Chowdhury, Leela Roy, Malati Chowdhury, Dakshayini Velayuthan, Hansa Jeevaraj Mehta, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Durga Deshmukh, Rajkumari, Renuka Roy, Purnima Banerjee, and also Begum Aziz Russell. These are the most important women leaders represented in the Constituent Assembly. Then major committees of the Constituent Assembly. Number of committees are created by Constituent Assembly to perform different tasks to relate to framing of the Constitution of India. The most important among them are first one is the drafting committee. It is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which had to draft the Constitution. Then Rajendra Prasad was the chairman of Committee on Rules of Procedure Committee, Steering Committee, Finance and Staff Committee, and also Ad hoc Committee on National Flag. Then Jawaharlal Nehru was the chairman of Union Constitution Committee, Union Powers Committee, and State Committee. This committee was therefore negotiating with the states. And also Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was the chairman of Provincial Constitutional Committee, an advisory committee on fundamental rights, minorities, and tribal and also excluded areas. Some of the other committees and their chairmen were Committee on Functions on the Constituent Assembly headed by G.V. Maulankar, Order of Business Committee headed by Dr. K. Munshi, House Committee headed by Dr. Pattabhi Sitharamaiah, Special Committee to examine the draft the Constitution, and a Credential Committee were headed by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. Then there are 5 stages of Assembly's work for the task of drafting the Constitution. The Assembly's work had 5 stages. First one, committees presented reports on issues. Second one is that B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor, prepared an initial draft based on the reports and his research into constitutions of other nations. Third one is that the drafting committee chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar presented a detailed draft constitution which was published for public discussion. Fourth one is that the draft constitution was discussed and amendments proposed and enacted. Fifth one is that the constitution was adopted with a committee of experts led by the Congress party known as the Congress Assembly Party played a pivotal role. Then the historical background or the sources of Indian Constitution. The British came into India in 1660s and traded under the name of East India Company. After defeating the rivals, the British became rulers in India. They followed a policy of conquest, annexation, and consolidation in India. Initially, they were busy with trade and commerce. But after the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, the British East India Company took some active interest in political matters in India. Emperor Ashoka Maurya was the first to introduce and establish the constitutional principles, engraved them in major rocks, pillars, and minor rocks for public to take reference, which is known as the Edicts of Ashoka. In 1707, or after the death of Aurangzeb, British Company took some active interest in political matters in India. Their imperialistic attitude to rule India became clear after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. In this battle, British defeated Siraj-ud-Dowla, Nawab of Bengal. The Battle of Buxar was annexation of Punjab, completed task of British imperialism in India. By the middle of 19th century, most of India was controlled by British. During this period, certain measures of constitutional reforms were introduced. During the reign of Warren Hastings, the Regulating Act in 1773 and Pitt India Act 1784 were passed. So, before 1947, India was divided into two main entities. The British India, which consisted of 11 provinces and princely states ruled by Indian princes under subsidiary alliance policy. The two entities merged together to form the Indian Union. The historical underpinnings and evolution of the Indian Constitution can be traced to many regulations and acts passed before independence India. So, East India Company, which came into India in early 1600, established their total administrative control by gaining right of taxation in Bengal after the Battle of Plassey in 1757, and thereafter took total unified control over India. Then Regulating Act 1773. Main provisions of the Regulating Act were the Governor of Bengal was made the Governor General. The first man to be appointed to this post was Warren Hastings. Second one is that for the assistance of the Governor General, an executive council of 4 members was created. Then third one is that the Supreme Court was set up at Calcutta with a Chief Justice and 3 assistant judges. Fourth one is that number of directors of the company was fixed at 24. The Regulating Act initiated the process of centralization in India. Then the Pitt India Act in 1784. This act introduces many important changes in the constitutional history of India. The number of members of the Governor General's Council was reduced to 3. The Commander-in-Chief was to be one of them. A special court was established for better trial of the company's officials in England for offences committed by them in India. By this act, the real power in India passed from the directors of the company to British Parliament. In Pitt India Act in 1784, the real power in India passed from the directors of the company to British Parliament. So, the Regulating Act of 1773 made a provision that the charter of the company would be reviewed every 20 years. Therefore, the Acts of 1793, 1813, 1833 and 1853 reviewed the Charter Act of the company and brought about some changes here and there. The first law commission was established after the Charter Act of 1833. So, the Regulating Act of 1773 made a provision that the charter of the company would be reviewed every 20 years. Therefore, Acts of 1793, 1813, 1833 and 1853 reviewed the Charter Act of the company and brought about some changes here and there. So, then the rule of East India Company was terminated when the British Parliament passed the Indian Council Act of 1858. Then the Indian Council Act of 1861 was passed by the British Parliament. This act is very important in the constitutional history of India because it has created a decentralization system of administration in India. The British Parliament passed Indian Council Act of 1892 and the principle of indirect election was introduced. So, the Indian Council Acts 1858, 1861 and 1892 are very important in the constitution making of India. The Charter Act 1813, 1833 and 1853, the company's monopoly over Indian trade terminated, trade with India open to all British subjects. Then the Charter Act of 1833, the Governor General of Bengal became a Governor General of India. First Governor General of India was Lord William Bentinck. This was the final step towards centralization in British India. Okay, the beginning of a centralization for India as the Act also took away legislative powers of Bombay and Madras provinces. Charter Act of 1853, the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General's Council were separated. 6 members were there in Central Legislative Council. 4 out of 6 members were appointed by the provincial government of Madras, Bombay, Bengal and Agra. It introduced a system of open competition as the basis for the recruitment of civil servants of the company. Indian civil service open for all through the Charter Act of 1853. Then the Indian Council Act of 1909. Indian Council Act of 1909 is also known as the Morley Minto Reforms. Then it is a significant event in the constitutional history of India. The important provisions of this act or Indian Council Act of 1909 is the enlargement of size of central and provincial legislative councils or direct provincial legislative council. Enlargement of the size of the central and provincial legislative councils. Then powers and functions of the central and provincial councils were also increased. For the direct elections to legislative council, first attempt at introducing a representatives and popular element. The member of central legislative council was increased to 60 from 16. Then introduced a system of communal representation for Muslims by accepting the concept of separate electorate. Then introduced provisions for the appointment of an Indian member in the Executive Council of a Governor General. That means provisions for the appointment of an Indian member in the Executive Council. Then the Government of India Act of 1919 and 1935. The Government of India Act of 1919 is also known as the Mondego-Chelmsford Reforms. This act made many important changes in the central and provincial government. So, the act introduced a bicameral legislature at the center. The central subjects were demarcated and separated from those of the provincial subjects. The scheme of dual governance or diarchy was introduced in the provincial subjects. Then the bicameral legislature at the center. The two houses were Legislative Assembly or lower house and the Council of States or upper house. Okay, the term of Legislative Assembly and the Council of States were 5 and 3 years respectively. The powers and functions of both the houses were also increased. The number of Indian members in the Executive Council of the Governor General was raised from 1 to 3. Okay, the system of direct election was introduced. The act made many changes in the provincial government too. System of diarchy was introduced in the provinces. The scheme of dual governance or diarchy was introduced in the provincial government. Then the act created post of Higher Commissioner for India. Through the Government of India Act of 1919 created a post of a High Commissioner for India. The term of his office was 6 years. Then the Act of 1919 was an important landmark in the constitutional development of India, which opened a new era of responsible government. Then the Government of India Act of 1935. That is, the British Parliament passed the Government of India Act of 1935, which was so valuable and important that the most provisions of this act were taken by framers of Indian Constitution. So, the act provided for the establishment of an all India federation consisting of the provinces and princely states as units, though the envisaged federation never came into being. The act was very lengthy written document. 1935 Act was very lengthy written document. The act proposed to form All India Federation. All the provinces were to be members of a federation. So, the act was very lengthy written document. This act proposed to form an All India Federation. All the provinces were to be members of a federation. The act provided division of powers by creating federal list, provincial list, concurrent list, and also known as a provision or residuary subjects. The Act established a federal court at Delhi. That another important feature is that this Act is the Government of India Act of 1935 established a federal court at Delhi. So, later the federal list of the center consists of 59 items, the provisional list of the province consists of 354 items, and the concurrent list of both consists of 36 items. The residuary powers were vested within the Governor General. That system were followed today. Another important matter of or feature of 1935 Act is that the establishment of a federal court at Delhi. Then the federal court was to divide interstate disputes and also heard appeals against the decisions of high courts. This same as to the provisions of Supreme Court of India today. So, then the system of diarchy was replaced by the provincial autonomy in the provinces. The act introduced a bicameral legislature in 6 out of total 11 provinces. Then the Cripps Mission. The Second World War started in 1939. Second World War started in 1939 and ended in 1945. And Great Britain was fully involved in this war. In 1942, the Cripps Mission was sent to India from Great Britain under the leadership of Sir Stafford Cripps. The Cripps Mission provided some proposals to Indian people. 6 matters are included in the Cripps Mission report. First one is that after the Second World War, dominion status would be granted to India. Second one is that for framing a constitution of India, an elected body would be set up in India. Third one is that the Indian states would also participate in the constitution making body. Fourth one, the British government was to accept the constitution so framed. Fifth one, the princely states would have the freedom to join Indian Union. Sixth one is that during the World War and until the new constitution was framed. Okay, then the Cabinet Mission Plan. The appointment of Cabinet Mission Plan was another important step approved by the British government in the process of constitutional development. Chief proposals of Cabinet Mission Plan were, first one, to form a Union of India. First one is that to form a Union of India consisting of both British provinces and Indian states. To form a Union of India consisting of British provinces and Indian state. Second one is that to establish a Constituent Assembly having 389 members. Third one is that an interim government with 14 representatives of the major political parties. Initially, the proposals were accepted by Congress, but the Muslim League under the leadership of Ali Jinnah rejected the proposals and left the interim government. The Muslim League observed Direct Action Day on August 16, 1946. On that, Hindu-Muslim clashes and riots took place in the various parts of the country. Disagreement and conflict between Congress and Muslim League continued. At this time, Lord Mountbatten proposed a plan to divide India into 2 parts, India and Pakistan. The Congress and Muslim League accepted the plan. On the basis of Mountbatten plan, the British Parliament passed the Indian Independence Act on July 18, 1947. It declared India as an independent and sovereign state. It established responsible governments at both center and provinces. Then third one is that it designated the Viceroy of India and the provincial governors as the constitutional or the nominal heads. Then it assigned dual functions to the Constituent Assembly and declared this dominion legislature as a sovereign body. Under the Act of Indian Independence Act on July 18, 1947 and ultimately August 15, 1947, India became an independent state. According to the proposals of Cabinet Mission Plan, a Constituent Assembly was framed as a representative body. It was accepted that the Constituent Assembly would act as the dominant legislature under the Constitution framed, and India was administered according to the provisions of Government of India Act in 1935 with some necessary modifications. The objectives of the framing of Constitution. The first one is that to set up a Union of India comprising British India and princely states, to set a federal form of government with a separate state and central governments. Third one is that to set up democracy in which all powers is derived from the people. Fourth one is that to protect integrity of India and her sovereign rights over land, sea and air, to help attain its rightful place in the world and work for peace and welfare. To sum up, the Indian Constitution is unique in its contents and spirit, though borrowed from almost every constitution of the world. The Constitution of India is the result of the efforts taken by the Constituent Assembly. Thank you.